For those of you who may be at this conference for the first time, don't know who Geopath is, what we do, why we do what we do, here's a quick little overview of our organization, why we are structured the way that we are. We are an 85-year-old non-for-profit organization, a trade group for the out-of-home industry. So we have members on the buy side, the sell side. We have advertisers that are members, and through this membership, we serve as a platform to help build standards and protocols for auditing inventory, making sure that the sticks in the ground from the sense of roadside are where they are actually located, and then also now responsible for generating the audience measurements. So we have a syndicated data product that we provide back and license back to our members. So all of the Geopath members can use that information for the buying and selling process. And collectively working on those methods, it helps alleviate sort of the risk of a single party developing a system off in the corner and then selling that to the industry. The industry gets to help dictate the path of how things are done and what features exist. So also having that third-party measurement is very important. There are many media channels, maybe media companies that may be creating their own metrics, but if you then provide that to an agency, you'll often receive quite a bit of a discount off of those numbers because there's almost some inherent bias in self-reporting. So having a third party create that audited metric, that currency for the industry is very, very important. And so we've been doing this for quite a bit, and over the past couple of years, we have expanded the media types that we are going to be measuring. We've always been measuring roadside inventory for the entire life of our organization. We incorporated transit research and transit methodologies into our methods about 5 years ago, and 3 years ago with the new leadership of Kim Frank, we are now well underway of overhauling our roadside format, but also incorporating place-based media as well as fleet media, which is going to be the session after this if you want to join us for that. And so it's a very, very interesting structure as our organization, but it serves the industry very well to allow all of the parties to go out and do interesting things and basically not have to fret about how the numbers are generated. So the way that we generate audience measurement, and obviously the diversity of media types in the out-of-home world is growing day by day. Not any single data set is perfect at measuring audience for all of the formats that we currently audit. We have billboards on interstates, we have phone kiosks in the urban areas on local roads, we have buses, we have trains, we now are going to be rolling in place-based. So no single data set is designed perfectly for measuring that. One of the reasons why that is that the data that exists right now, location data, mobile location data, it's often sort of an exhaust of another purpose. Location data coming from mobile phones for ad exchanges, its real structure is intended for understanding that individual device to be able to deliver ads back to that device. It's not necessarily designed to measure how many people are in a building. But what you can do with taking a data set from over here, sales information, tax information, looking at traffic counts from over here, origin destination information from aggregated trip movements, connected car data, you can start painting a very, very clear picture of the entire population and how they move. So we've been doing that with our roadside project for quite a bit, and now we're taking that same approach inside venues and inside sort of a destination points of interest. And so there's a lot of different pieces that are coming together with this. The group at Intermix has done a fantastic job helping guide us through a lot of this work. As Ryan used to work at AirStage, they're experts in location information, and so we've been trying to bring the best of the best from data sources, from technologies, to be able to provide a very robust audience measurement tool for all out-of-home media. So right now we have roadside, and the next two that we're tackling, place-based and fleet. So we're going to dive into place-based. So going into an unaudited or non-audited format is not something that you do overnight. in our organization, we want to make sure that we do a couple things. We take particular steps to make sure that we arrive at ultimately a used standardized currency for all of the membership to leverage. The first is to define the scope of what we are doing, in this case, place-based measurement. Get the stakeholders involved. Ryan has worked over the past couple of months helping us get together all of the people that are in this space, the people that are interested, obviously securing funding for the pilot. And then the second is to start iterating, start testing, building a prototype, gathering the data, building sort of that first proof of concept, but also communicating back with your members as we're all working on this together, making sure that we find what type of first-party data do you have available? Is it something that's universal, or is this inherent of maybe the type of venue? Then as that first version comes online, it's iterating, improving upon things that may need some tweaking, getting feedback from the users, getting feedback from the buy side, from the advertisers themselves, because ultimately it's the advertisers that are using this to make decisions across all media channels. We want to make sure that what we're building is useful for them, it's available at the appropriate granularity so that they can integrate it into all the work that they do. And then as an organization, taking that new methodology, passing it from the development team into the technical review, up to the board to get it approved, and ultimately the plan is to have all of a Geopath inventory, or all of Geopath audience location measurement accredited by the MRC, which we've heard quite a bit of interest in making sure that all media bought by some brands is MRC accredited. So the good thing is there are no standards yet for all out-of-home. Digital place-based standards have been created last year. Out-of-home standards are currently being built right now. The plan is to unify all of those into one standard for out-of-home, and that's going to hopefully wrap up at the end of this year. And at that point, we could move forward for accreditation, which is going to be very exciting for many. So let's talk about place-based after all that. So place-based is an incredibly diverse ecosystem. There are airports, there's bars, there's all sorts of different environments, and with the technological advances of screen manufacturing, connectivity, deploying a network of within a venue that has become less and less expensive as time goes on. So it's starting to really pick up, and there's almost an infinite expansion that can potentially occur in this area. So one of the things I wanted to get from you, Adrian, and share with the group is place-based media as its own unique channel, different from roadside. What is the value proposition that place-based media fits into what Intersection is doing? Because you have roadside inventory, but you're also in transit. And so how does that fit in your portfolio of as a publisher to provide to the advertisers?
So that's a great question, and just kind of like to tee that up, let's talk about a few different technology trends that are taking place right now that I think are really important to kind of lay the groundwork for that conversation. So the first trend you can think about is the fact that urbanization, right? And that's got nothing to do with technology or anything else. The reality is that there's massive migration of folks throughout the whole world who are moving from more rural areas to urban areas. And so that in itself is, means that everything you mentioned is as assets as part of place-based media. With the phenomenon of urbanization, they're getting more and more exposed to information, in place-based media. The second reason, second thing I'd call out in terms of a trend is the commoditization of technology that I think you kind of alluded to, right? The reality is that you go to any kind of big brand, big box store, and you look at the same television that you say bought a few years ago for a few $1,000s. You're effectively spending now hundreds of dollars for what you used to spend thousands of dollars, and so that's leading to very kind of like it's really easy to actually scale and put out a lot of assets out there in relation to converting traditional static to more digital-based media. The last trend I'd call out, which again a few years ago we weren't there yet, but I think we're increasingly getting to the point of with location and mobile data sets getting a lot more accurate and at scale. That sets us up for the right time in terms of I believe this is the right time to actually be investing in this area from a measurement perspective, but. Just talking about intersection zone philosophy and this stuff, ultimately you want to make sure that you can reach your audience at the right point and the right time. And we increasingly, especially in urban areas, people spend a significant amount of time commuting, for example, right? And so for us, from our perspective, then that's really important to be able to reach those consumers at the right moments in time, with the right sets of media. And so that's why from our philosophy, we are going to basically keep investing in both street side media as well as place-based media, because we think it's really important to engage with consumers.
If you've heard me talk on these types of groups before, one of the statistics that I love is of the 1.1 billion trips across the United States every day, about 45% of them are with the purpose of buying a good or service. So the people that are mobile, that people are moving around, the reason they're doing that is there's an objective at the end of that trip. And so to be able to communicate with them as they're traveling is really important.
For sure. In fact, this is a crazy thing, and this is, I was recently I used to work at Google, and I was recently talking to a friend of mine who still works at Google. I was shocking because, Google being the online and digital company, but it was really shocking, but very honest of the person to acknowledge that it's like, I have to tell you that I've in the last few years when I've discovered new brands, I've discovered them through out of home and place-based media. I haven't really discovered new brands through pure online
banner ad?
Yeah.
Great.
We should probably put that quote out there, right? So I completely agree with you. Yeah.
So the medium itself is really fun, and I think for I don't work on the agency side, but I imagine for the creative folks out there, they're incredibly diverse canvases. Every single venue has its own unique characteristic personality. So being able to use that, having a data set to then kind of accompany that to measure the types of persons that are in a particular location is going to be really exciting. So right now with the pilot, we have been collaborating with pilot participants, talking about the measurement standard, reviewing documents, gathering information. I leave it to Ryan to talk about the incredible task of gathering information for place-based. It is not a small feat.
No, it isn't. It's so we have a team at Intermix that has been working with the 20 pilot participants to basically define the data attributes that the inventory and the venues are being defined as to contribute into the unified inventory database that Geopath is building. And it's interesting because the pilot participants, and I'm sure we'll get into the actual participants in a minute, but they're really across a wide range of operator types. You have like the traditional players that have out-of-home media or roadside media like Intersection or Lamar out front, but you also have newcomers into the industry like Topgolf, for instance. And Topgolf, a great company, their core business is obviously giving access to the driving range. So, but they have this great audience that they can advertise to, and they have tons of screens in every one of their bays. And so working with the participants to understand not only the structures that their frames are attached to, but also the layout of the ad panels or the faces has been a challenge, but it's exciting because
deep rabbit hole.
Right, it's been a very deep rabbit hole, but it's super exciting because we can sense that Geopath is laying the foundation for a measurement system that's going to be able to weather the changes that come through with programmatic and some of these other things that are coming soon.
One of the things that Ryan just mentioned, the unified inventory database that we're building, so it includes all fleet media, all place-based media, all roadside media, all in one resource, because all of it's going into the same platform for the Insights platform and also the Insights API. It's sort of universal taxonomy about how we put everything together is very important. But then also about the individual ad. It's ultimately what we need to be able to report. And this isn't necessarily applicable for maybe like a vinyl on a wall, on a corridor in a transit station, but for digital, in the digital world where so many dollars are coming from, being able to have an individual ad play on an individual screen within a venue that may or may not be triggered due to some other action that's happening around it, that individual ad play and the number of impressions and the audience composition of those impressions needs to be available to then be aggregated up to the network level. And so that's the level of detail that we are striving for and building into the system that allows for the ultimate flexibility if you're trying to roll it up to a network or if you're trying to just understand in a programmatic sense an exchange of how many impressions did that ad generate. Well, that's great, but you're buying thousands of ads that may be triggered and then be correlated back to other activities. You could be connecting it to other first-party device information, rewards stuff. There's a lot of data sets that can now be looked at to find correlations between out-of-home audience exposure and whatever campaign objectives existed. And so having that is very exciting now, because previously, even at Geopath for roadside measurement, we only had one weekly number that was for the entire year. Now we can talk about how many impressions were generated during the morning drive, during the evening drive on Monday, and having that really allows at the end of the campaign to go back, do some really deep analysis, find out what worked, and how to improve upon it next time. So it's creating this cycle of buying and selling and planning that I think is really exciting, that we can move into showing our clients and the people that leverage out of home how effective it truly is. We all are here, obviously, because we believe that, we know that, but now we're going to have a lot of metrics to back a lot of that up. And so our goal is to integrate this into one holistic system. And what I want to do, and it's not quite that fast, we're going to talk in a second about how all this is going to come together inside the Insights platform. And so this is the Insights suite that you can check out at our booth. Version 1.0 came out. We've got a lot of cool features that are going to be coming out this year. But then also all the other fun things that are going to be coming out with the other pilots that are going to be rolled into that. So why don't you go back a little bit into the participants
Yeah.
and all the conversations and Ryan's life for the past 6 months.
Yeah. I've probably annoyed some of you in the audience chasing you down for giving a demo over the place-based overview. But yeah, it's been super exciting to be part of this. There were 17 participants. We actually had 3 more join, so there's 20 total participants right now. Took a while to get everybody wrangled together, but we were able to kick off the pilot, collect the venues. We're processing about 20 venues and the associated inventory within those venues for all of the participants. In terms of the coverage, those venues are in about 25 states across the country. 5,000 total units of inventory inside of those 275 venues. So a lot of inventory to work through, a lot of spreadsheets that needed filling out to get to where we are now. We just finalized the inventory, which is important, of course, for calculating things like the locations of the inventory, which is important for calculating things like exposure zone, and then from exposure zone we can go in and get at the screen circulation impressions. But I think outside of the actual initial data sets that we'll be delivering to people, one of the most important things of this is there's 20 20 people that are a lot of times competitors in the marketplace sitting down together and discussing what their needs are from a measurement standpoint, and that really to me is the most amazing thing, and it's sort of highlights the value of Geopath as this non-biased third-party auditor, to be able to actually pull those groups together and get the feedback that's needed to get a measurement that's responsible and satisfactory for the industry. So, and then below you can see all of the names of the participants, some of the usual suspects, and then some newcomers as well.
And having been in this industry for 10 years, I want to echo what Ryan said about Geopath being a very unique organization for parties to come together and engage in this collective due diligence of building an audience measurement system that can be used by the buyers and planners, and really allow people to think more strategically, focus on strategy, focus on creative, and not bang your head against the wall trying to figure out how to measure audience yourself. Leave that to us. We, for some reason, enjoy it. It's a fun problem, actually. I think that's one of the other things that we're enjoying solving things. There's new technologies. Adrian talked about sort of like the advancements of the screen technology. I think 10 years ago when I first started, the iPhone was less than a year old, maybe just a year old. Distributed computing was certainly in its infancy, and now all of these technologies, these data sets have reached a certain level of maturity that we can build a currency upon it. When they were in their infancy, it was like, yeah, that's kind of a cool idea. Let's keep an eye on it. But now it's really ready to go. Did I lose contact again? It's going to jump forward 8 slides. All right. So, talking about getting this all in one unified platform, the way that we approach things now is we want to make sure that it doesn't matter what market you're in. You can look at this locally, you can look at it nationally, you can look at audience all over the place and what inventories deliver against those audience. And this sort of audience-first approach is very, very important. We used to just focus on age, gender, ethnicity, household income. Now we can start talking about, well, what audiences, like people that went to Starbucks in the past 30 days, people that are in the market for a new car, people that bought a car or searching for buying a car on the internet. Those are audience segments that we can now connect from the movement from the home locations to venues, and that's allowing the industry to really, again, focus on that strategy, being able to talk about what type of people are you trying to engage. Okay, let's go find the locations that are best suited to do that. Or vice versa, if you're a publisher, let's look at my network. What audiences am I really delivering against? What's the composition of my audience? Who should I go after because they have a high value in my marketplace? So I think there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be coming to light throughout all of this. And so there's a fun little shot of the internal schematics. Another thing that didn't exist 10 years ago, being able to have mapping systems that have the detailed schematic of the interior buildings to be able to identify, going through this arduous task of pinpointing every single screen, auditing all that information is no small feat. And so thank you to the Intermix team for helping with this. This has been a very, very big task.
Can we have Kendra and Kendra and Nathan, sorry, stand up and just take a little recognition there? Sorry. Day and night doing this.
And so some of the fun stuff that's coming out, basically being able to look, you may call this a photo sheet, but all the meat of it would be at the bottom, being able to look at the total population, the total impressions, target composition, in-market audience, in-market percentages, and of course TRPs, reach frequency, and market composition, or audience composition index. Those are all the metrics that we are going to be able to have at our fingertips for every single ad on any audited location, be it place-based, fleet, or roadside. That's where we're going.
Just can I add one thing there real quick?
One
thing. I think it's so cool that you can, now the way that Geopath is architecting the solution is you can go in and put in digital posters, and if you have digital posters inside of a venue or outside of a venue on roadside, it's all going to show up there based on the audience that you're being able to deliver. So having all of that under one roof, and then Geopath, or I guess the next session is on Fleet, all of that will be able to just be in one single place for you to deliver the audience that you're wanting to, regardless of where the units are that are delivering it.
So having this level of information, how is this going to change your conversation as a publisher at the planning stage and maybe even during the execution, but post-campaign? Let's focus on planning and post-campaign. How are those conversations going to change with this level of information available?
So I think it's huge. Look, I've been there. I was sharing with you earlier the fact that I've been there through this movie before, so to speak. When I was in digital, in the early days of digital, I used to remember very contentious conversations between the buy side and sell side about the fact that no one could agree to basically one set of numbers and actually how to measure the same set of media. And honestly, we went through that process. We came up with the standards. And effectively, once you actually get to the standards, and you also mentioned being audited by the MRC. By the way, we've been throwing out MRC a lot in this in the last 1.5 days. How many of you are aware of who the MRC is or what they do? So around 20% of the audience. But the MRC stands for the Media Ratings Council. They happen to be the established auditor of auditors in the media business. So they were set up. This is pre-audits in television. I think it was in the 60s. Television actually was caught cheating, and so there was an act of Congress that effectively created the Media Ratings Council. And so the MRC audits Nielsen for television, and they audit Arbitron for radio, for example. And so that's kind of like what I feel is that as an industry, we need to move beyond the conversations about how to measure, versus saying, let's come up with standards, and then let's build to the standards. And if you get audited against the standards, that's a given. Now it's all about actually establishing the value that you could basically use the medium to actually establish the value for our advertisers, for our customers. And so that to me is the exciting piece of this, is I've seen that movie before, and you go beyond the friction of how to measure to more about, hey, this is a valuable medium, and this can really help you with your objectives, and frankly, you can basically start seeing a lot more dollars flow through the system. And so that's kind of how I see this playing out, is this is going to be far more helpful to get to the more advanced conversation with your customers, because you're not worried about the baseline.
Right.
So.
Right.
So I'm super excited about this.
Yeah, so the MRC standards don't exist yet for out-of-home. I have the first meeting for the overarching out-of-home standards on May 17th. So this is, and it's an open conversation too. So if there's anybody that's interested, reach out to the MRC, find out about it, because it's through the community, the stakeholders talking it out of exactly what are we building before we actually set forth to do that. So I know we're about wrapping up. Oh, okay. See if I can.
Let's do it one more time.
All right, so here's Geopath. Anyways.
Let's go the other way.
Thank you. So some other fun functions that are going to be rolling out in the Insight Suite in the near future, the idea of being able to manage a project, collaborate user to user within your organization, creating reports, graphics to be able to share with the client. There's a lot of information that we just talked about. Fitting that into a distilled format to create that picture that tells 1,000 words is going to be very important. So we're working on that. Wonderful development team at Intermix. The idea of campaigns, being able to have campaigns start date and end dates. Now that we have a data set that spans time, being able to understand that if it starts on the last Tuesday of March and it goes on till February, July 4th, those data sets we can now pull and actually have a historical performance to look at post-campaign. And so that real data to then back up all that is going to be fantastic. So I'm really excited about it. I think a lot of other people are as well. So where we are right now and that idea of how to develop a measurement standard for a non-audited media, we're right in the middle. We're in this iterative process. So we have a lot of conversations going on, rolling from the iterative process to actually getting this out in our members' hands. The goal right now is to have place-based available this fall in the Insight Suite. So that's where we're seeking to get that target and working with all of our awesome pilot participants. I feel that is incredibly achievable.
Quick commercial. If you're in the audience and you are a place-based network, if you want to participate, it's still open. So just stop by the Geopath booth and give them your card, let them know what you're interested in, and they can pass it along.
I think we have.
All right, yeah.
4
I
minutes
think
for
we have time for 1 or 2 questions. Yeah, sure.
The gentleman from Canada.
Can you talk about any of the methodologies? I'm sorry, I thought I was going to hear something about the methodologies that you're looking at. You said you're collecting data. How are you collecting the data? What data are you collecting? What are you doing?
Sure.
I'm here to learn about. I'm sorry, I'm on the transit section next, or the fleet media. You're not going to repeat all the Geopath stuff again, are you?
Some of it.
I would like to hear about methodologies, please.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's very similar to the methodology that's used for the roadside today, but obviously tweaked a little bit to accommodate for the place-based environment. Geopath's methodology is unique in that it's built to be flexible to whatever the best available data sources are today to accomplish the responsible data sets that they need to produce to get at the impressions numbers. So in terms of the inputs that are contributing, mobile location data, of course, is one of the inputs through partners like AirSage and some others that are contributing hundreds of millions of device level data, panel data. There's just like traditional surveys, I guess kind of like Kim's keynote presentation with the guy with the clicker, there's survey data that's going into this as well that will inform notice or dwell times on top of what we're getting from the mobile location data. Just like with roadside, where you're understanding the underlying land use. So is this a school that should generate a certain amount of trips? You're also, because of the partnerships that we have with the mapping and venue-based data sets through a company called Here, used to be called Navtech, they're able to inform who's in a mall, what are the stores inside a mall, what's employment in the mall, and that drives how many people should be going up to the second floor versus staying on the first floor. Were you about to say something?
No, it's going to piggyback on what you were saying about understanding the nature of the venue itself, the context of the data that you're receiving from other locations, like the mobile location data, looking at information like hours of operations, the type of individuals that would be expected to be in those based upon other consumer patterns that we see over here. All of these inputs are providing a different vantage point of what's going on. And so we are trying to get the best view from each one of those, where it's reference counts coming from sensor data at the individual screen, or it's ticket sales, alightments in airports, understanding how people are distributing themselves down one terminal versus another, where those flights are coming from. All of that information sort of comes in to help paint a slightly clearer picture to contextualize one data set against the next. So there's a lot of pieces that are moving around there. And if you want to, stop by the booth and we'll get into the weeds if you want, because it's a fun project and there's a lot of neat things that we've uncovered. One of the important things also is the first party data. So a lot of our place-based and some of the technology, there's inherent technologies embedded in those screens, either through Wi-Fi or cameras, some of the engagement factors that can also help feedback, get this sort of feedback loop to then build and strengthen some of the modeling information if it's not explicit or from a data source itself.
And that's where I think that Geopath sits in a unique position to be able to not only audit inventory, but audit the first-party data that's being contributed into the solution as well.